Hi, everyone.
Hi, guys.
We're just give it a minute for our people to get in the room, and then we'll do a little introduction. Hope everyone's having a good Friday. And they're ready to craft with Tessa and Kid Made Modern. And Michael's, of course. Just give it just a minute. I see a few people are still coming in. I know Fridays can be busy, so you're probably running around getting all your supplies together. All right, well, we can get started. My name is Lori. I'm from Kid Made Modern, and we are so excited to be partnering again with Tessa from Studio Jane. If you've been in one of our classes before with Michael's, you know that we love ourselves some Tessa from Studio Jane. She is a master crafter. She makes awesome stuff, and she loves to teach us, and so we love that. Just a heads up, I will be the moderator of the class. So if you guys, I see you guys chatting, but I would love it if you would put your questions and your comments in the Q&A rather than the chat. That just gives me one place to look. Hi to everyone that said hi already. But yeah, just any questions, anything you want to share, anything like maybe what you're working on, what colors you're using, what materials you're using, that sort of thing can be in the Q&A, and I will ask the questions. So we can't hear you, we can't see you, but we can definitely read your comments and ask Tessa as we're going along the class. So again, one thing too, we'd love to see your finished products. So I'll remind you again throughout the class, but please put them in. Please have an adult share it on social media, your finished projects, and we can hashtag Michael's classes and go make stuff or make it with Michael's. Those are 3 hashtags that I'll remind you in the class as well. So, all right, Tessa, let's get started.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for crafting with us. You might be on spring break or just wrapped up spring break or going into spring break. So we're excited to do some spring crafting, and we are making this fun little framed window pane, basically. I don't know if you or maybe your parent has seen dried flowers like this before. It's an antique style of drying flowers between glass. And so that was the sort of little inspiration for these, but we're making ours out of paper and cardboard, which means that we get to cut them all out and craft them and make them 100% our own and unique. So I'm going to go through the whole supply list and what you need. If you haven't gathered everything, then you can grab anything that you need and we'll get started. So to make our little hanging flower art, we are going to be using cardboard or chipboard. I have like some scrap chipboard pieces here. You can use cardboard from a box. You could also use a paper plate. You just want something that's a little bit thicker to be the frame here. You can see we're using 2 pieces. We're going to cut out 2 different ones to seal our flowers in our little window pane. And then we're going to use a couple of bowls. So I'm using 2 different bowls from my kitchen. We want them to be 2 different sizes so that we can put one basically inside the other to make a ring. So we're going to cut those out. So 2 bowls. We're going to use a marker to trace our circles. Then we need some construction paper. You can use any colors that you want. I have a whole little color palette of pretty spring colors. But you can make your flowers any style that you want. If you want to make them all one color, that would be beautiful. If you want to make a whole rainbow of colors, that works as well. You could also use extra pieces of the paper plate or cardboard and paint them if you'd rather. So yeah, you can also use just computer paper and color it in, or notebook paper, that would work as well. Then you're going to need some scissors. So we're going to use scissors not only to cut out our circles, but also our flower shapes. Then we are using plastic wrap. So I have a roll of plastic wrap here. When you get those bowls from the kitchen, grab that roll of plastic wrap. We are going to be using the plastic wrap to make the actual little window pane. So that's going to seal our flowers inside, and then you can see them 360 all the way around. Then on top of that, we're going to use some fuzzy sticks. So these, we're going to create a little hanger with a fuzzy stick as well as a little border on our frame. And then lastly, we're going to use some paint and paint brushes. So I have some fun little spring paints from Kid Made Modern. These guys you can use to make some fun little decorations around the edge of our frame. So I'm using the Kid Made Modern washable paints for those. And our little fuzzy sticks are from our Kid Made Modern Arts and Crafts library that you can obviously get at Michael's. So hopefully you have your library open. You can also customize your little picture or your little frame here as much as you want. So if you want to add pom-poms or rhinestones or other fun elements from the Arts and Crafts library, feel free to do that. Yours, I'm sure, is going to look different than mine, and I think that's great. So if you're using different colors or different materials, that's totally fine. As Lori said, put it in the Q&A so we know what you're using, what colors you're making your flowers out of today. I love to know what you guys are doing at home. All right, so with that, I think we are ready to get crafting. If you guys have any questions on all those materials, pop it in the Q&A, let us know what we can answer. Okay, so to get started, we are going to use our chipboard or our cardboard, paper plate, whatever thicker material you're using for your picture frame. And we're going to take our bowls and we're going to trace them onto our cardboard. So I'm going to take my largest bowl first, and I'm going to flip it upside down. I'm going to take my marker and trace along the edge. So you can see here, I've got my little circle there. And then I'm going to take my smaller bowl, flip it upside down, and put it in the center. Just want to kind of center that to make sure I have a pretty even ring all the way around. And then trace that. All right. So we are going to use 2 of these rings. So let's see if I can get 2 on here. We're going to make 1 more circle the same way. And I can just squeeze 2 circles on my 1 sheet of cardboard here. And my bowls for this larger bowl here I'm using is about 6-7 inches wide. And then my little glass bowl is only about 4 to 5 inches. So it's going to leave about an inch ring or so. You can definitely make yours bigger or smaller depending on how big you want your hanging flower art to be.
Hey, Tessa, we have a couple people that just want us to slow down just a little bit, but just a heads up for everyone too. This is being recorded. So if you get behind, don't worry. We will have this posted on Michael's website in 24 to 48 hours. So you'll be able to rewatch it if you missed a step, but we'll slow down just a little bit so everyone can get caught up.
Absolutely, yes. If you are just starting or just jumped in already and grabbed all your supplies, then again, you're going to take your bowls and trace them. So again, we're going to go ahead and flip a bowl upside down, and you can trace the whole rim of the bowl with your marker, or a pencil will work as well. And then we're going to take our smaller bowl, flip it upside down, and put it in the center. And that's going to create these rings or sort of a donut shape. And then we're going to cut along both of these lines. So we're going to remove the center and cut along the outside. So I'm going to take our scissors and sometimes construction paper or even a paper plate, it's a thicker material than a regular paper. So sometimes that can be a little hard to cut. This might be a task that you want to ask an adult to help with if you're struggling with your scissors to cut it out. But just take your time and cut along your edge or your little line here. Sometimes I also find it easier to cut your shape away from all the excess. So you can kind of cut that off, and then you don't have all that big extra paper or cardboard in your way. Can make maneuvering your scissors a little complicated sometimes. So I cut out my outer ring edge first. And then we're going to cut out the center of the ring too. And to do that, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to poke a hole in the center. And there's a really easy and safe way to do this. You're going to put your scissors, well, first put your shape down on your surface. And then you're going to put your scissors in the center and then pull up onto your scissors. But you're going to keep your hand out toward the edge here. So I don't have my hand underneath. My scissors and my shape are down on the platform on my table here. And then I'm just going to pull this up to create a little hole. So you can see my hand nowhere near that center hole. You want to make sure you keep your hand away from that. And that's an easy way to do it. And then that just creates a hole big enough that I can put my scissors in. If you've crafted with us before, I know we've made some wreaths that are similar like this. So you can definitely use this method over and over again to cut out a ring. And with a piece of cardboard or a paper plate, any scissors that you're using will work. So you don't need big scissors or really sharp ones, and it will poke a hole right through. So now I'm just cutting along the other line for the interior ring. And again, we're doing 2 of these rings because we're sandwiching them together to hold all of our flowers inside. And there we have our first ring all cut out. And we're going to do the exact same thing to cut out our other one. So again, I'm just going to take my scissors and cut along the outer edge first. Oh, we got really blurry there. Sorry, guys. There we go. So we're going to cut along the outside edge. Again, you can cut away any extra cardboard if it's in your way, make it a little easier to cut. And I'm just going to cut right along my outer ring. Okay, so we've cut out our whole outer ring, and we're going to do the same little method to puncture a hole here. You can also, if you're having trouble with that, or you don't feel safe to do that, if you feel like you're going to poke your scissors, we don't want that. So you can also always cut along, cut right through your ring. So for this side, I'll show you how to do this method as well. So we're going to cut right through the edge of our ring. And then once we have these all attached, you won't even notice that little line. So if you'd rather do this method, then you can do that as well. You can always tape that back together, or since we're sandwiching these together, we're going to glue them together once our saran wrap or plastic wrap is inside. So we'll be able to glue them flat and you won't see that little line. That just gives you a couple different ways to make your own little rings at home. Again, I always think it's this sort of shape, just this little ring or donut is a nice tool to have to make all sorts of crafts. So now cut out my whole ring here. And you can see I just got this little cut there. But once we sandwich these together and glue them, that will hold both those edges down and you won't even see that little line. We also have like a front and a back to this. You can definitely make it double-sided if you want to decorate both sides or just decorate one, but either way, you won't even notice that little line. So there we have our 2 rings all cut out. We're going to set these aside. That's going to be our first step. This is our frame. And we're going to start on making our paper flowers. So all of our flowers here, you can use any colors that you want. Again, I used a few different colors here. I've got a pretty pink and yellow, a couple shades of green, and this like minty blue color. So any colors that work for you is fine. And then we're going to take our marker and we're going to draw our own flowers. So you can draw any type of flower that you want. Maybe you want to draw tulips or daisies or roses or totally random flowers. You can make them any style that you want. So I'm just going to draw a couple of flowers with like big long petals, sort of like a daisy. And I'm just drawing them freehand. You can definitely look at a flower if you want to mimic it, or you can cut out one and then trace it if you want to make a template version. But we're only going to cut out a few flowers so you can make them all different, which I think is fun. And then in our little sample here, not only do we have some little flower shapes, but then also a couple little leaf shapes, added in a couple little dot shapes just to add a little variation and color throughout. So you can make all different little shapes if you want to. So I'm going to draw a couple little circles that can be flower centers or maybe just cute little details to add some more color in there. And I'm going to draw all of these first and then cut them all out. So I always like to work a little bit in an assembly line fashion. So I'm going to draw all of my shapes and then cut all my shapes. I'm going to switch to a different color here. And on my pink paper, let's see here, I'm going to draw a little pointed petal. And do that, I'm just going to kind of draw rounded and then scoop in to make a little point. And these can all look different. No two have to look the same, even no two petals, let alone no two flowers. And I'm making my flowers all about 2 inches or so, 1.5 inches. They're not real big. As you can see on my whole sheet of paper here, it only takes up a tiny little corner. And this way they can overlap, but you can get quite a few different flowers all in your little window pane. I'm going to draw a couple of little leaf shapes too. Because why can't there be a pink leaf? Because that would be cute. And then you can draw little vines if you want to. Maybe fun, different kind of little shape leaves. All sorts of fun little nature ideas. I'm going to draw another little leaf on this green color. And I'm just kind of making these up as I go. So again, there's no wrong or right way to draw these. You can make them all as different or as similar as you want to. Let's draw one more leaf on here. And then we'll draw So sort of similar with a little pointed shape, but just a little longer. Okay, so I think we've got a good little grouping of flowers and leaves, and now we can cut them out. So just like I did with the cardboard piece, that makes it a little easier. I'm going to cut this away from the rest of my paper. I'm going to save all this extra paper because we've got lots of more crafting to do with that. And now that I just have a small piece of paper to work with, it's going to be a little easier. And I'm just going to cut along the line I just drew. And you can definitely use if you're using a pencil, you can just erase any of your little pencil lines. Or you can just go back in and trim any extra little bits of your marker that are showing. Or you can keep your marker border if you want that look as well. So on this, I have a little black edge there. I'm just going to go back in and just trim that off a little bit more. And there we have our first little flower shape. And you can make as many flowers as you want to fill yours. I think I would do at least probably 5 different elements. So if you want to do a couple leaves and a couple flowers, that would work out great. Just to fill up your space a little bit, but you can cover the whole thing if you'd rather, or depending on how big of bowls you used, you might have a little bit bigger or smaller space to fill. So you can just make as many as you'd like. And to try not to get my marker lines, I'm just cutting kind of right inside the edge instead of directly on top of the line. It'll make your shape a tiny bit smaller than what you drew, but it won't have any of your marker edges. And when you're working with paper, it's really easy to just trim them as you go. If you feel like one petal has a little bit too much of a point or is a little longer than another, you can always trim them or just draw another one. And obviously you guys can see the colors I'm using, but I'd love to know what colors you're using at home too. So tell us in the Q&A what colors of flowers or leaves you're using, or maybe if you're using a different type of paper, give me some ideas to use for our next craft session.
Tessa, could you use felt instead of paper for this as well?
Yeah, you could absolutely use felt, which would be great. So if you're using the Kid Made Modern Arts and Crafts library, there's tons of little felt strips in there. So you might have some little pieces left over, or those little strips you could definitely cut into little flower shapes.
Yeah, and I was even thinking, even like if you have old wrapping paper that you want to use up, that could be really fun to find some fun shapes on as well.
Wrapping paper is a great idea. Yeah, you could really make it almost like a collage. So, you know, old magazines, and just cut the shape out instead of drawing your own. That's a really cute idea. And if you like this idea and the look of this craft, you could always make another one with real leaves and petals as well. You could go on a little nature walk and collect some little flat leaves or flowers. And you can do the same thing with them. Have a little less crafting, but a little more nature, which I always love too. just cutting all these out and making my little pile of shapes here. And since each one is unique, if you cut a little too far in and chop off a petal, maybe that flower just has one less petal, and that's okay. We're also going to be overlapping some of these when we make our little collage of them in the window pane. So if you feel like you like some shapes better than others as you cut them out, then you can easily overlap them and show off your favorite ones. And now for little circles and anything circular, I always like to kind of move the paper as well as your scissors as you go. And that helps create a nice rounded shape. And when you cut through something, so by that I mean, if you're taking your scissors and your scissor tips cut, they actually create an extra little tear in the edge. So when you're cutting something that is, you want a really smooth edge, cut, but don't drop your scissors all the way down so that they don't create that little point. Hold your paper or your material closer to your handle, and that way you don't get that rough little edge as you snip through. And some of these little pieces might be kind of small, but just go slow. Make sure that you're keeping your fingertips holding on to your little piece of paper and out of your scissors. And again, some of these little circles I just think are fun little details, but we'll also add a couple to be little centers. I cut all mine out of yellow, but you can use other color centers too. Because when you're making your own flowers, you can make them any style you want. They don't have to be based on a real flower.
Tina, they drew on the back side of the paper so their pencil lines don't show after they cut out the flowers and shapes.
That was very smart. Yes, I love that idea. Then you don't have to worry about having any little lines.
Great idea.
Okay, so now that we've got all of our little shapes here, I'm going to attach a couple using glue dots to create the little center. You can also use a white craft glue or even a glue stick for this portion. So I'm just going to take a little glue dot on the back of a little center here, little circle, and pop it right in the middle. And we'll do that for one other little shape. I'm going to leave some without a flower center. Okay. And so from here, we're going to take one of our frames and our plastic wrap. So I'm going to move all these little flowers aside a little bit. And for our plastic wrap, we are going to take a piece of the plastic wrap. And you want to make sure that it's going to be wider than your circle itself. I'm going to tear a piece off. You can also cut this if you need to. We're going to make sure that our square of plastic wrap is wider than our circle. We're going to go back around and trim all this extra off. So to start with, I'm going to add some glue dots along the edge of my frame then. This is going to hold our first layer of plastic wrap in place. I'm going to say just have a couple little dots. I'm going to put one every couple inches or so. All the way around. You could use tape for this method if you don't have glue dots as well. I don't know how well the liquid glue will work with the plastic wrap, but you could definitely use a tape. Okay, so now I've got glue dots kind of every couple inches all the way around. And I'm going to take my square of plastic wrap, and I want to make sure that I keep it as smooth as possible. So I'm going to start by pressing it down to 1 or 2 glue dots in one side. And then I can take the other ends and stretch it out. If you get a couple wrinkles in it, that's totally okay. We're going to have a little bit of creases once we add the other one on top and they stick together. I'm just going to press on each little glue dot all the way around. So now my frame is all connected. And we're not going to cut this quite yet. We're going to wait until we get everything on, and then we'll cut it all off so it stays together nicely. So now from here, we're going to start placing our flowers. And I'm not adding glue. The great thing about this is that the second piece of plastic wrap that we put on top will seal all of our flowers in place. So you can play with this a little bit and feel free to get creative and layer them, overlap them, create your own little composition. And I just want to make sure that as I lay all my flowers in, I'm keeping them within the center of the ring so that you can see the whole flower. And you can make any sort of little composition that you want. I'm going to add a little green leaf. And then some of these little dots. Again, you can add as many elements as you want. So I like a little bit of the plastic wrap to show. So I definitely have gaps in between some, but as you can see, I've got some pieces all overlapping. But it's up to you. You can fill in more if you want to. I think it's kind of fun to have some of the plastic wrap showing though, so it's not filled in entirely. That way you can see that material that you're using. Okay, so once you have a composition, a little layout of all your pieces that you've cut out inside, we're going to tear a second piece of plastic wrap. Again, making sure that it's wide enough to cover the whole thing. And plastic wrap sticks to itself, as we know, which is great for our craft, but also can sometimes be a little tricky. So sometimes I like to hold both ends here. So I'm holding it to stretch it out. I'm going to just lay it directly on top. So now it's kind of laying on top, and now I'm going to press on top of my flowers. This is going to create both layers of the plastic wrap to stick together and basically seal your flowers in place. Now you can see I can pick this up and my flowers aren't moving. They are stuck inside. So you've just created a little window pane effect. So next then we're going to add our second ring right on top. And to do that, we're going to use glue dots again. So I'm going to take my ring and add some glue dots every couple of inches, just like we did on the first one. And this ring I'm using has the little cut in it. So if you use that method, yours is going to look the same. But again, once we glue all this, I'm just making sure on both ends that I have a glue dot close to both sides of that cut so I can make sure to seal that down. All right, just a couple more glue dots. And you can use any size glue dot that you might have at home that you got at Michael's. I've got just little mini ones here that I like, but you can see those little shiny dots. Okay, so now that all of your plastic wrap is on, we're going to take our second ring and we're going to sandwich it and put it directly on top of the first ring.
Hi, Cameron. I'm not sure what the issue is. That's something about the video just started on Zoom, but if you have any questions, let us know. Again, if you are running behind on this project, don't worry. We will actually post the video of the project in about 24 to 48 hours on staples.com or Staples. I'm so sorry. Good God. Michaels.com.
Yes. Yeah. If you're missing a step or you feel like you're a little bit behind, it's always fun. Sometimes you can just follow along these steps and then you can create it a little bit later too. Okay. So once you've added your second frame here, we've got everything sandwiched in, and then we're just going to go ahead and cut all this extra plastic wrap off. I'm just taking my scissors and cutting right along the edge of my frame. Being careful as I go so I don't cut the frame. If you do, that's okay. We're going to add a cute little fuzzy stick frame around the edge of our frame. So that will be an easy element to hide if you cut a little bit of your frame. And the plastic wrap's really easy to slice right up through with your scissors. And there we have our little frame here, almost all ready to go. So next we are going to add our little fuzzy sticks. So we are going to be using, I pulled out these fun and kind of wild fuzzy sticks that have all these big fluffy bits on them. You can use any type of fuzzy stick, or you don't have to use them at all. So if you don't want to use this, you want to skip this step, you definitely can. But I just think it adds a fun little extra personality. So I'm going to take more of my glue dots, and I'm going to add some glue dots along one side of my fuzzy sticks. And we're going to need 2 fuzzy sticks, or almost 2 fuzzy sticks to go around the whole edge. So I'm going to start with 1. And glue dots really work the best with things like fuzzy sticks, but you could probably tape it on as well if you don't have glue dots. Okay, so now this edge where the glue dot is, I'm going to stick right on the edge of my frame, and then just kind of wrap this all the way around the edge. And like that, have a cute little extra border. And then we're gonna do the same thing with our second fuzzy stick here. You could definitely switch between two different colors or different styles if you want to. I am adding glue dots every couple of inches all the way down, just so that it holds on nice and tight and you don't have any little gaps that it kind of hangs away from the frame. One more on my little edge here. Okay, so now we're going to take our fuzzy stick and just like the first one, I'm just going to line these up right next to one another. And it completely hides the fact that you're using more than one fuzzy stick and makes it look totally seamless. And there we have our whole little border all the way around. And then we're going to go ahead and add on our little hanger. And to do that, I'm going to take a 12-inch fuzzy stick. I'm going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to twist the two tails together. I'm going to twist up a little bit here. So now we have this long little loop that we've made all twisted on one side and then a loop on the other. It's going to be a really easy way to hang your little artwork when you're all finished. And I'm going to put a glue dot or two on that little twisted portion. And then I'm just going to kind of push it right in between. So I'm going to open up my little frame just a little bit and then just push my little end right in. And there you have your little hanger. It's ready to hang. Adding just one or two glue dots in there, I would just give it a little extra pressure when you're working with glue dots. They stick really fast. You don't have any dry time like you do with liquid glue, but they are somewhat pressure based. So if you give a little extra squeeze wherever you put a glue dot in and hold it for just a second, that always helps make sure that it totally adheres to the surfaces. Okay, so there you have your whole picture frame, but we still have the cute painted detail to do. So if you are skipping paint, then you are done. Look how adorable. The painted detail around the frame is definitely a little extra pizzazz, which I think we all know I love, but you don't have to, or you can paint or doodle any style that you want to. I'm going to open up a couple of my little paint colors here. And I'm using, again, all of our Kid Made Modern washable paints, which are great. So I've got Shamrock, which is a pretty green. I've got Avocado and Petal. And to make these fun little details, rather than using the paintbrush itself, I'm going to show you the sample again real quick here. You can see along the edges here, I've got this fun little painted detail that almost looks kind of like little flowers, but they're just little dots. So I'm going to take my paintbrush and instead of using the brush end, I'm going to use the base or the tip of the handle. I'm going to take my little tip of my handle and I'm going to dip it into my little paint jar. And then I'm going to dot it onto my frame. So you can see right there, got a couple little dots. And I'm going to switch back and forth between my dark green, light green, and pink, and create a couple little dots in the dark green and the pink. And then we'll add in some little leaves with the light green. Again, you can use different colors if you want to. These are just the shades that I'm using. And I'm just dipping my paint brush handle into my little paint jar. You can also squeeze out a little bit of paint or onto an extra piece of paper or paper plate if you want to. But these little jars are really easy to just dip your paintbrush right in, which eliminates a little mess, which I think we all love. You can probably get 1 or 2 dots before having to dip again. So now I've added all these little dots all the way around, and you can either wipe off your handle real quick or grab another brush, whatever is convenient for you, or just wash it off real quick. And then you're going to switch to your pink or to another color, depending on what color you are using. And I'm going to do the same thing and just add a little pink dots now. And you can make them bigger if you want to. You can dab a couple more times onto them, and we'll just kind of expand that circle. So you can see the pink are just a little bit bigger than the green, and you can mix and match as much as you want with different colors. You could also draw a design on your frame if you prefer, if you don't have paint or you just want to use a different material. You could definitely use crayons or markers and draw a fun design instead. And this is a really simple little stencil design to make, but you can use, again, multiple colors if you want to use, just do little dots. We are going to paint some little leaves with a paintbrush in a second. All right, just kind of looking at my frame, see if there's any other little dots I want to add. I'm going to add one more over here. And I'm just doing the front of my frame, but you can definitely do both sides if you want to. So I would wait until this is totally dry, and then you could flip it over and do the same design or maybe a totally different design on the other side as well. Okay, so now we've got our little dots on. Next, we're going to add a couple little leaves. So I'm going to take one of my little Kid Made Modern brushes here. That's a small little paintbrush tip. And I'm just going to dip it into my avocado, my brighter green. And just along the edges of some of these pink ones, I'm just going to draw almost little lines coming right off. And they're kind of hard to see because they are very small. Get that to focus for you. But just a couple little lines off of some of my little pink dots. And I might not do all of them, just a couple. And just gives the idea of a little leaf. So from a distance, when it's all together, it has sort of a leaf pattern without it actually being a full leaf. You can do 1 or 2 depending on how much you want. And I'm just going to turn this a little bit so I can get the other side here. I always feel like it's easier to sometimes it's easier to just move your artwork rather than reaching across it so you don't smear it. Or if you are in a space where you can get up and move around it rather than having, again, to reach across it. We are almost done adding cute little leaves and details to this frame. And with spring quickly approaching, this little craft is perfect and definitely screams spring to me. All right, and there we have our whole little frame, all painted with adorable tiny little details. That's what's fun about a craft like this, is that we're using so many different elements that all come in different sizes. So from a distance, you've got all these fun colors and shapes you can see, but then as you get close, you've got all these fun tiny little details too. So that brings the viewer, maybe whoever it is going to come in and see your artwork, they have to get a little closer to see those fun little details, which I always think is really special. And there you have your own little spring flower wall art. I'm going to let that one dry, but we can kind of see it here, all complete and ready to go. You can, again, definitely set it aside, let that front frame dry, and then you can always paint the back as well. Be adorable hanging in a window or on the wall. So thank you so much for crafting with us today. We had a great time. Thank you, Michaels and Kid Made Modern. And I can't wait to craft with you guys again soon. Thanks so much.